Punk is not really a style of music. It was more like a state of mind. Mike Watt, co-founder of the Minutemen. All punk is attitude. That's what makes it, the attitude. Joey Ramone of the Ramones. Punk music is the sound of rebellion. Bono of U2. The most punk rock thing you can do is to facilitate joy as much as possible. Eamon Mcgrath. Eamon Mcgrath has always been punk. If punk is something much more than a style of music at its core. If every expression of a person reveals a devotion to the ethos of punk, not just a musical or stylistic expression defined as pop punk or hardcore punk, whether there are stage divers into a mosh pit or studded jackets and chains in pockets, if remaining DIY in the face of every modern innovation is punk, if feeling sick of the status quo, the unchallenged notion or standard, and doing something about it in your own life is punk, then Eamon is punk. I'm not an expert on punk, by the way, not one bit. The rock music historians would make sure to expose that. But I'm convinced that punk was always about rebellion. Bono went on to say that punk found its way into their music by allowing hope to permeate their laments. It was counterculture, audacious, but it always stuck with me. Then along comes Eamon Mcgrath talking about facilitating joy out of the rebellion. Eamon is a Canadian troubadour, a 20-year veteran of the DIY scene, with one of the most excessive touring and recording histories you're going to ever discover. He has chased the dream through dozens of albums, label deals in every size and style of venue, solo or major tour support, and even written 2 books about it, which you should really check out, by the way. He has stood under the brightest lights and slept in the darkest corners, literally, and he hasn't missed a beat as he continues on. And he stands to be one of the best chats about every topic in the biz that you'll ever find. My name is Glenn Erickson. This is Almost Famous Enough. Thanks for spending your time with us. This is Eamon Mcgrath. Well, this is fun for me, Eamon, by the way, because I think we met like a long time ago. A long time ago. A long time ago.
You played in, for our listeners, know that you played in a band called Weed Pool.
I did, yeah.
For context. So I'm from Edmonton originally. I've been playing music since I was 11, playing music professionally since I was about 18.
Yeah.
And I just turned 37, so going on 20 years in this
career.
I use the triple in the biz. 20 years in the biz.
Man.
So I've seen a lot of changes, as you have, and we've rolled with a lot of punches, and we've adapted
No
to a
doubt.
lot of. But I think you're going to talk about a show that we played together at the Black Dog one time. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's like, this is the thing about this industry that's funny, but especially when I overlap with Edmonton adjacent people, which is the unfortunate amount of times I can say, I know how many times we've been in a room together.
Mm-hmm.
And never sat down and had a real conversation, which always feels at this stage of my life regretful, right?
Well, it's funny because I think that actually speaks to like a wider sort of state of the union, or so for Canadian music in general, you know?
Yeah.
Because there was a long time when I first started touring where I still think I'm correct in this because I don't think that much has changed in this regard, but when I first started touring, and I would, as you have, doing the Vancouver to Halifax through Thunder Bay drive, like the back and forth.
Yeah.
Which now it's funny because as someone who's actually toured internationally more than I tour Canada now, probably, we didn't even realize it when we were starting out, but we were like on a regular basis driving,
the hardest route ever.
In the world, a quadrant of the globe, So I think that it's like I used to joke when I was younger, like during this time we're talking about when we played together back then, that every single person that was involved in putting together like a tour of Canada from, Victoria to St. John's, every single person involved in that, in getting those wheels turning, literally and figuratively, could have fit and in my parents' backyard in North Glenora in Westmount. and I still think that, like, I think that if I were to actually do that and like approach that kind of an undertaking, geographical undertaking, which I took for granted when I was starting out because it was just all I knew. But now if I was going to actually undergo that again, it'd be like 35 people. It'd be a great party. But so like everybody's kind of connected in this like spider web. And so we all know each other in this like tertiary or secondary way. And so there's a lot of trust that kind of gets built up with each other because everybody's sort of vouching for the person that is
100%.
quite literally east or west of them, and I still think that's kind of the case. Like any artist that's sort of starting out that actually wants to understand what the true sort of rigors of touring are would come in contact with the same people that I know, the same people that regardless if it's like a country band, a metal band, a soul, whatever. Like Canadian music continues to be so great despite the challenges that we've all had to overcome in the last couple of years, especially because no matter what style of music we make, we come at it from this same perspective of just understanding distance and time. And it's funny because we played together. So like we played together, I think in like 2005 or 2006 at this Black Dog All Day rager. And I was in this band called the Wild Dogs at the time. We were pretty notorious. And I've since really cleaned up my act, but in those days I was pretty out of my mind. And I remember the thing that really inspired me the most was bands like SNFU and No Means No, because of the fact that they were great punk bands, but also the fact that they were so connected to music that sounded nothing like them, like Junior Gone Wild or Show Business Giants or Carol and Mark. And I remember there was also like, there was this really great community in Western Canada, like Core Blund even comes from that same world. 100%. And that really always spoke to me, I think. Like, and so that sort of like bridging the gap between like ferocious renegade punk rock of Iggy Pop and then like country music like of Ian Tyson or something. To me, it just really made sense as a Canadian, and it just fit so logically into the canon that I loved. Like I was like, well, of course this music sounds like this.
I love that you say that because one thing is I've always felt this is very Canadian too. Like, so I love that you've immediately framed it like that because, there's been, let's use a little political language without making it political. The history of this country, at least I've lived long enough to feel like I've had a good sense of it, has felt for the most part until recent times, very widely centrist, not just political views, but just in general, in social context, culturally, it's like very accepting, very overlapping. Like even the musical genre Americana, I was like, I think Canadiana existed before Americana, whereas there's like folk and country and bluegrass and blues and rock and roll, like all felt like they were part of this thing that if you didn't want to label one or two of them together, you could put it under this thing and it made sense.
I completely agree.
And so and more relative to you, which was down the list of things I was going to ask you and talk to you about, was you've carried this label of punk for a long time, which I think came out of your early influences, came out of a lot of your early records. You've obviously in almost 20-year career spun all over the place with some like genre testing and just being free, obviously, in your songwriting style and expression. But punk to me is an interesting microcosm of the conversation that you just started too, which is like, what is punk? Is it just a style? Or is it like, I always remember people being super offended when Bono was claiming that they were punk because he connected so well to the Ramones and the spirit of a thing, not the expression of the thing, right?
And
but it's kind of true
You
And I'm
two
curious
open
what your
for
take is. It
they opened for Discharge once. I mean, it's a weird world out there. I
yeah,
that's a good question because like in the it's weird. It's a code word that I've always used. Like to me, Grant Parsons is a punk rocker, the ultimate punk rocker. And I really do believe that in the trajectory of American music, I think that if Grant Parsons had lived long enough to hear Black Flag, he would have thought it was amazing. I really believe that because I think that like there's a very thin line between what Otis Redding is doing with his voice and what Henry Rollins is doing with his voice. Like they're channeling, sadness and anger and pain or whatever into something beautiful and joyous. And
yeah,
that's the essence of like, to me, that's the essence of the blues and soul music and country and like all of this music channels something dark into something bright, you know?
yeah,
But the problem with the word, with the word punk is that it's being so co-opted by a faction of the music industry that is, in my opinion, one of the most destructive forces, which is the what the modern conception of punk is, like all that Vans Warped Tour stuff. And
yeah,
it's just corporate budgets with a studded vest,
yeah, yeah,
which to me is like the most un DIY thing. Cause you're so like not being yourself and you're not doing it yourself. And so I kind of like, I've been trying to distance myself from using that word to describe what I do,
mm,
but it's also served me really, really well because I think that for people that understand what I'm saying when I use it, like someone like you, we can communicate so much in a crowded room silently with just a nod when I use that word to describe Graham Parsons and someone else knows exactly what I mean when I do that. But
yeah,
for the
yeah.
wider audience and for marketing purposes, it's totally
Well, marketing
disastrous.
is the word. Is like marketing has essentially determined what the music industry is. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a baseline assumption I think we can get at on
And
that.
exactly. And like, especially nowadays when, you have to classify your record as something so that it fits into a specific category so that the algorithm knows how to chew and regurgitate it, like it used to be a way of, like a record store to sort of direct people and program people. Now, like it is quite actually a way to program people. And so I struggle with it because I think that there's really no term that better describes what I do, but I also think that there's probably no worse term that describes what I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been wrestling with this tension and it's been fun because I've been wrestling it through conversations in a podcast. So that's been really fun for me and it's fitting the goal of why I even started. But so in this instance and in this context, I've been wrestling through the irony, like I said, that to me, marketing is defining what the music business is. But
Yeah.
when you made a reference to the record stores, is that the history of music and how it spread was what on surface might appear like marketing, but it was really through the purity of this thing I would call curation, which is somebody who loves a thing. It starts with somebody who loves something so much they share it to the people that they believe will also love it. And that grows into a more functional, formal concept of curation, like somebody is being anointed with good taste or a
Yeah.
large knowledge to do this work. And they did it through radio because radio would attract people in and they would do it through record stores. But because capitalism and the dollar is the bottom line, right? We have a history where those bottom line efforts would take over the purity of curation, I felt. And the beauty of one of the beauty of the spirits of what we're calling punk is anti-establishment. And I think a lot of people would consider that's at the core of whether or not they would agree with how they align to
Yeah.
punk or not. Is that correct?
You're dead right. Like even like curation's a good word. I mean, a more pejorative term could be like a gatekeeper or something, like
Yeah.
where that term is used really negatively to
Yeah,
criticize.
people don't like that one as much anymore.
Yeah. So, but I'm going to say, if you think about it like in these terms, this is the way that I've kind of tried to figure it all out, is like, even if you go back as far as, like, I'm not even kidding when I say this, and I don't think this is a stretch, but like as far back as Mozart, like if you watch the movie Amadeus, you have the contrast of these two sort of parallel societies. You have like the aristocratic, monarchy, like the academic upper court, where
Yep.
everybody knows how to read and read music. And, Emperor Franz Joseph commissions a piece, commissions Mozart to make this
Yeah.
opera, which ends up being Don Giovanni or whatever. Like, that's like arts funding, right? Like the established cultural hegemon of the time is giving this artist, permission, welcoming them into the popular ruling class. And then there's a scene in Amadeus where Mozart's in an underground barroom somewhere playing a harpsichord and making fart jokes. And it's like, that's then the music that's for the underclass and the subservient of their society, who can't read music or write music. So like, in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, you had the high courts of Vienna, who were publishing literally all this recorded music, written music. And then you had, people playing in a tavern somewhere, and we'll never know what that music sounded like. But in the context of its time, that was the punk rock of its day, whatever that was. Yeah. And, and then you kind of go down the chain, and we have, then you get to the Alan Lomax, when he, traveling the US and documenting all these folk singers, Delta blues singers, before he came along and introduced that art form to the established upper classes. That was the punk rock of its day. And so on and so on. So like, I think that we do need a new term. I think we do need a new word, but like, I sort of, and not in an elitist sense, just from what I've noticed about my own career, I'm like the guy in the tavern in the Austro-Hungarian Empire that is, like, the goal of any musician is to play for as many years as possible, but it's the means by which you do that and the means by which you achieve that goal that sets you apart from, the dogmatic ruling class to like this sort of free spirited libertarian underclass. And that's the same paradigm, I think, those two different parallel worlds.
Well, I love this because we're 16 minutes in, and I've already felt like I've lost about 4 rabbit holes that I would have loved to go down in our conversation, opening up ideas. And maybe we'll come back around to them if my ADHD is under wraps today. Well, but let me ask you this. Well, actually, let me just say this really quick. I feel like when you were talking there about the Amadeus story, I feel like the pop culture reference would be the Titanic movie, where
absolutely, that's a great example.
If you relate to Leo, he takes the upper class girl like under, and then they're having a wild party with wild Celtic music, which is what was punk to them at the time, which 100%. Was like not refined, which just came purely out of spirit and emotion and
playing by ear. Like they were literally playing by ear.
All of these factors
instruments
are on display, but in the pop culture sense, but in the real human sense, a viewer is allowed to connect with that and probably cheer that on. And then at the same time, the same viewer is probably going to deeply relate to the little chamber quartet that's playing everybody out as the ship is going down.
As the ship goes down.
In their tuxedos, and decide to stay with the ship and play this beautiful music. Because ultimately the music is bigger than the labels or the context we try to put on it. So despite how different those worlds are, both of them had such significance, which I think is probably the beautiful capture by the director of
and coexist. Right. And they coexist.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to say that one is better than the other. I mean, like I know what I want to get out of what I do. I think I'm closer than ever before to finding peace with that, because like I went through about 10 years where all I did was tour. I spent my entire 20s in a van. And thinking back on it now, living in Toronto and like always kind of chasing the dragon, putting out a record every 10 or 12 months, like quite actually like every year, and then doing, like these mammoth tours. And like I toured myself to the point of exhaustion and like near death. And I wonder now what my aims were. Like I'm almost skeptical of my past decisions because I think that I was sort of like trying to achieve the same thing that someone with like a more corporate mentality in music would be trying to achieve, but I was just doing it on a non-existent budget. But
Yeah.
I was like chasing the dragon. Like I wanted to get on, direct support slots. And I was like, the hustle was nonstop. And now I've like totally like stepped back from it. And I would way rather make the same amount of money or more playing to less people because there's so much more important things to me at this point in my life, like playing to a room of people who are actually listening. I'd rather do that than get some big support opportunity and play to a packed room of people that don't give a fuck.
Okay, that's a great pivot. And I'm just going to be willing to lose some of the ideas as we're talking, because I know this is going to be fun no matter where we go. But this is why I felt like a conversation with you could be unique and I wouldn't get certain things from other people. Like you have a story and a history in this business that is incredibly unique. And that reflection is really honest. So I appreciate it, by the way. Having spent all those years, being like the incredible road warrior, first, I just want to make a note that the very thing that you described, how you get exhausted by that version of chasing the dragon, because you get exhausted, but the pursuit, right? I'm making the assumptions and you can correct me where I'm wrong. It just gets fueled by a belief that you've seen it happen before. You've seen it around you. You've maybe even seen it happen to peers, but you've definitely seen and read the stories of the people that were kind of your North Star, your guiding light, that, by doing this, this will come someday, right? And especially we started this whole conversation talking about the Canadian landscape actually being one of the hardest touring landscapes, but really shaped kind of in the fire some incredible bands and this ethic in Canada about this was the way that you built your career, right? Is that you had to drive, especially if you were Western Canada, you had to drive 8 hours to get to the next city of 300,000 people, compared to like in the States or in Europe where you're driving an hour and a half to get to a million or more, a center. And it shapes kind of who you are and but it can beat you down, but you expect that something's going to happen. You expect something's going to happen. And so the way I'm framing this is what weeds out most people. Like, why has the Canadian music scene never been bigger, or always had this tension of like, we need to really promote our artists and help them to compete with, the American music scene and the big industry there and all the things that have come out of that? Well, how about we just talk about the fact that what it takes and what we've seen as the ethic of how you do this beats and destroys people pretty fast. It's very hard. And you have the unique position right now, 20 years down the road, despite your reflections, which I'd love to hear more about, of you actually lived through it. You've persevered it where most people have dropped off and died. To be able to have that reflection, you're one of the few who's even gotten that far down the road of doing that. And I think what's interesting for me to hear you say the reflection of like, maybe I didn't always make the best choices, and maybe some of the values that you're learning right now are ones you want to think about how to implement to keep going. There's very few people I feel I could call up to have that. There's a few people I know who maybe have gotten more onto the mainstream machine, so there's a bit more of a machine kind of floating them along. There's guys like another Edmonton guy, Scott Cook, is maybe the only other guy I know who's like the traveling
road dog,
dog, right?
Scott's
who just, he's like 300 days a year out playing everywhere. They'll let him just set up with his acoustic guitar and play. And that's a story that most people can't get to.
there's so much there. Like what you're talking about is a testament to how fast everything changes, not just now, but like the bands that I idolized when I was 15 or 16, who were like pretty much for me the ultimate band was the Constantines, and I'm pretty public about my love for the Constantines. But the Canadian music industry in particular, but the music industry in general, is just like I didn't even realize how much it changed from the first time I saw the Constantines to the first time I started touring, let alone, between the first time I started touring to now. Like even the 3 years where I saw the band, that band for the first time and actually was able to go out on the road myself and make a living, it was a totally different landscape. Like I was too young to realize how quickly it had already become something else. And I think about that a lot. Like for me, like probably the like I've had this kind of epiphany in the last few years after the pandemic and how hard it was to get everything going once everything opened up again. And that was a really hard stretch of time, and so it's hard to not get like wrapped up into this sort of like golden age mentality syndrome where, I'd be like, well, the best time to be a Canadian musician was between 1995 and 2005. That was like the golden age. But that came with its own horrible side effects too. Like nowadays, as cities get bigger and urban centers get more expensive and more and more people move to smaller towns, Canada is easier to tour than ever, but starting is harder than ever, I think. Like when I was younger, you just kind of did it. Like it wasn't like you just sort of drove, picked a direction and drove. Now, and
without phones that had a map on it for us.
Like it was crazy and it was beautiful and it was wild and it was unexplored and but we still don't know what's going to happen. Like we still don't know what's around the corner, especially as Canadians, because like we don't know how it feels to live in a country that's like geographically closer together. We still don't know what that looks like. Like as someone who's lived in Ontario for 15 years, I mean, I can't believe how, a 401 tour used to be something you did on a Thursday to Sunday. That was it. Now you could spend, 3.5 weeks touring Ontario and never have a day off. I mean, it's just totally different. So yeah, it's hard to keep track of how much it's changed, and the changes have been so gradual. I think like that you don't even really notice that they've happened at all until you think back and reflect on the timeline. Like I can't believe how different it is now. And so there used to be, this very like concrete sort of input output equation where like you did certain things a certain way and you got a certain result. And now it's just so abstract and it's so unpredictable that I personally have just decided to not even bother anymore with any of the mechanics or the schematics and shit that used to matter. Like you used to write a marketing plan and you time your tours to your record releases, and there was these things called a cycle. Now, I don't even think that matters anymore. Like it doesn't.
I'm talking to a lot of people. Like the concept of this 18-month cycle of an album release is like done. It's gone.
It's all ancient and it's all out the window. And it's just now I'm at this point where like I just want to do what feels good. That's all I want. And I'm sick of like fighting a battle I'm never going to win. I'm sick of like trying to rally the troops and like this like call to arms mentality. Like, and again, going back to what you were talking about punk rock, like that's like the number one thing with punk rock is like mobilizing your community to fight this eternal battle. True. But now I think the best thing we can do is just exist peacefully, like away from it all. Like I just don't even want to bother with it anymore. And I think in doing that, I probably found more artistic peace than I did when I was younger, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Like, and it's only when It's only when like the mechanics start to, and the administration and the anal retentive stuff start to become important that I get frustrated. You know?
Well, I mean so it's funny. Like I had an episode with your good friend Peter Dermanis, and he talked about having a kid, and the way you sort of just described, like maybe the most punk rock thing is like existing peacefully and bringing these things into the world as counterculture. And then he described having the kid and the things that he's been learning. He's like, maybe the most punk rock thing I can do is like be a good dad and be there for my kid. It's this seasoned perspective for sure.
I think you can, like, the most punk rock thing you can do is facilitate joy as much as possible. Like the feeling in and of itself is no, it's not connected to any movement or anything. It's just like, what human being doesn't want to be happy? Like there's nothing like inherently contrarian or something to being in a great place. Like, but I think that
you use the word joy. You just use the word joy, which I've grown up figuring out a very clear distinction between joy and happiness. So yeah, which human doesn't want to be happy? But I love the way that you actually first said that, like, maybe the most punk rock thing is facilitating joy, which is actually it's the stirring, right? Like happiness feels like a state. Joy is something that stirs up inside of you.
And the work. And I think like now that the music industry especially is so decentralized and it is so, every person for themselves, and it is so fragmented and it's anarchy, like more so than ever, it's important to really have a sense of ownership on the immediate work that you do within your community, and that work should benefit you and your community, not like a faceless booking agent somewhere, or like a someone who works for a label that you're on and you've never even met them. Like it used to be that it was like, you had this feeling that you were working for other people. And I think one of the good things about this kind of post-apocalyptic Phoenix rising from the ashes industry that we're in now after COVID is that more and more artists are realizing that at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones that are still making records. And if you have this burning desire to do something and like, there's this work in your life that you have this hunger to do, then you're the only person that you're accountable to. And I love that. I mean, because I could tour whenever I want. I could have the whole time, but I had that narrative of the popular consciousness telling me that there was like a strategy to everything. And that burnt me out just as hard as actually playing the shows. Like feeling like
is that the bottom line? Is the bottom line of that if you don't do it, I mean, because I'm guessing, I'm making an assumption here, Eamon, that like sustaining a living is really hard in this business, right?
Yeah.
And so if, that narrative feels like it's partially driven by fame and just the pursuit because we're in an attention industry. But it's also just driven when you've done it, even for a short period of time, like 3-4 years is all it takes before you realize, I could do all these pursuits for the attention, fame, but I actually have to keep this machine running that will pay the bills while I keep doing that. Is that more of the narrative over even the long period of time for you to be like that you kept doing it longer? You did it longer than probably you wanted to have to do it. Because really, like the most punk rock thing I saw about you while looking over your stuff was realizing you don't even have a fucking website under your domain name anymore. You let it go.
I don't.
Which is in the attention industry right now in like 2025 is probably the most anti-establishment thing that you could do, which I think was awesome. But that must take just a long time to let go, because what you're talking about is I just want to do things this way now for the feeling, for this personal satisfaction, for smaller people that would actually give a shit and not spend all these resources of your own energy and mental stability on the people who maybe you've learned never gave you shit anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get there? Like,
Well, yeah. Here's an example. Like, okay, like my partner Sheila and I we run Cassettes Records, which is a label, but also we put on shows. We book tours. We record bands. We do everything that you could possibly do to help music and artists that you love and
yeah,
care about and want to support. And we've had a couple really like beautiful moments where we've done really small shows for really amazing songwriters or bands, with an affordable ticket price in a great, intimate, cozy, atmospheric venue. That maybe like 20 people showed up to the show at, but the artist still made, $500, and like everybody was moved. And then at the end of it, you just look at each other and you're like, well, like, why does it have to be more than this?
yeah,
What else is there?
yeah,
And then it's like, oh yeah, this is all it has to be. And because Sheila and I approach music as people that, lived in a world before the internet, that like listened to vinyl and made mixtapes for people. And like, if you wanted to go see a show, you had to, camp out in front of the record store and wait to get tickets.
yeah.
And like, music mattered to us in this like very labor intensive way. So we never just consumed music. Like, it wasn't something that we consumed. It wasn't like going to buy ground beef at the grocery store. That's what it's become. And that in turn has made it so that people that want to go see a show are more interested at the opportunity of being in the presence of fame than they are at the opportunity to truly be affected by something beautiful. And I don't need to go and try to convince all these people that are never going to give a shit about what I do that I'm worth listening to. I just don't have to do it.
And maybe they haven't been affected yet. This is what I wonder, right? Especially because I've got a 20-year-old daughter who's like loving music. She helps me on the podcast. We do this together. We go to Folk Fest every year. I kind of raised her on it. So I'm loving that she's like growing into that. But it also makes me see how many people aren't beautifully affected, like you said. Like, and even this last year, I got really kind of taken aback by it. And I realized that and this is the honest confession, because what you're talking about is where I see it even happening in me, who's involved in this business, get disaffected by the way that it's consumed. Like, you talk about pejorative and the term content being the biggest pejorative around now. Everything's just content. If it's put online, it's content. Music isn't content. It's a whole different force. Exactly. And I remember watching I knew, and he's not new, but because he's older, but a guy who's blowing up now, Steven Wilson Jr. was here, and watched him do a thing where you've been around Folk Fest. Like, if somebody has a moment where they command that whole hill,
that's great.
That's powerful. And then the next day, it started pouring rain in a typical Folk Fest way. And this young new group that was just blowing up called Richie Mitch and the Coal Miners, what I could tell is like they were like every young band going to save their big hit song, because they were there off a viral song that had like 1 billion streams. And then the next one is like not anywhere close, right? So that song caught on. That's why they're there on Folk Fest. They know it. There's a lot of young people there, which is awesome to see. It starts pouring rain. And just because I'm in the biz, I know that they started playing the hit song early because they knew they might get shut down. But they chose to do it for everybody. The generated joy and the affectedness of all the people to be sharing that moment, dancing in the rain. The band was getting soaked. They played it anyhow. They just ripped through it. It was an incredible thing to be a part of. But it just immediately what I thought of when you talk about like this affected, this beautiful affectedness of music on people. I see what you're talking about, because I see where it's happening even for myself, in the way that we quote unquote consume anymore. And it also, what you said, takes me all the way back to the early 2000s. I started my own label here in the city out of the same things, which is I knew how to do all those different things for people. So I put a name on it, is really where it just came from, right? That's the DIY spirit, which also made me think it's really cool to hear that you're doing that
it's like
now.
It's like naming your band, you know? Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I mean,
go ahead.
But those moments you're talking about, I mean, because of these really arbitrary and fake parameters that we've just created called followers or view counts or whatever, like we've somehow been conditioned to believe that just because there's more people at the magic moment on Gallagher Park Hill, that somehow that moment is like more magical than if there's only 20 people there. And that's just crazy to true. Me. Like
the same thing can happen despite the numbers.
And I've seen
any group.
I mean, I know that this has happened to you too, where it's like you're at a show and there's only 5 people and you're like in the corner in tears with some, you know, listening to a songwriter that no one knows. And the fact that there's nobody there makes that music or that moment so magical.
Absolutely.
Like, so I think that the whole system has just been like toxified. People are just distracted and like searching for something that's not, in my opinion, worth searching for. Like we live in like you said, an attention economy, and it's like everything's become about volume, you know, like if you get 1 billion people to download your app for $1, you're a billionaire. And I just think that our whole concept of value and cost as just a culture has just become like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, I mean, for that reason, like I want to continue working to bring like really true special moments to people that are going to just recognize them. I don't care how many people do. I just want people to know that there's really great music being made on a small, local, regional scale. And sometimes that's exactly what makes it so good, is the fact that, you know, like bands like the Smiths were only a band for 4 years. I mean, that's what, that's what makes the ticket worth buying, is because everything is fleeting and everything does have a cost. And if it's not permanent and it took a lot of effort to bring it to you, then it's valuable for its place and time.
Yeah.
And that's how I think about all of it now. I don't really play shows. I don't want to play anymore. Like that feeling of like grumbling and like throwing gear in the van because you got to do some, you know, crappy gig to get yourself from point A to point B, or like, those are the experiences that really truly burn you out, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've said this before. You referenced the band that I played in. I think one of the best gifts I was given was to play with a couple of guys in that band who, I don't know how, but they clearly had already figured that out. That, you know, they were like, we're going to play the shows that we want to play, and we're going to take the extra day to make the nice drive and kind of fill our spirits back up, you know, and go through the nice part of Canada, even though it's going to take an extra day. And that kind of shit like made such a difference.
Absolutely.
To even surviving the 7-ish years that we survived. So
it makes you a better musician. It makes you better at bringing that moment to people. I mean, like I was like the quintessential, like, you know, crust punk. Like I just refused to have a day off on tour. It would be like my personal record was like, I did 62 shows in 58 days in Europe one time.
Oh my God.
Like fly date, show that night, you know, 62 shows and like nonstop. And then like show, get up in the morning, fly home, sometimes go straight to the airport after. Like I was like masochistic, and I really thought that I was like, who knows what I thought? I thought I was like this, you know,
Superman.
Yeah. Or like this punk rock preacher or something or whatever. And
were you getting that narrative from the outside? Because people did start to talk about you in a sense of lore.
I think
right?
I was, to be honest with you, I think I was like totally depressed and like not dealing with a ton of things I probably should have taken the time to deal with. And I was using work as a vice to distract me from things that I didn't ever
Yeah.
take the time to deal with until I sobered the fuck up and did the work.
Yeah.
What I think was like at the time was like a punk rock ethos, which I still have, was actually just the execution of this really destructive substance abuse problem that sort of had music as like the wrapping of the gift. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't go out and play 62 shows in 58 days. Like I respect that insurmountably. I mean, like all the people that I look up to did that. And and I'm really glad that I did do that. I think that like I did things that no one will ever take away from me. And I also want to be known as someone that works really hard, but I just think like anyone that kind of grows up and gets smarter, you want to work smart, not hard. And that's really all it comes down to. I don't want to
Well,
burn myself out.
you're not gonna stick around, and it sounds like you are planning on continuing. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I want to be able to like do my job properly if I'm going to do it. You know, like
Yeah.
I am pretty stubborn and I have some very strict ideals that I will not stray from. And I don't want the things that I love to be the things that kill me in the end, you know? Like I want those things to inspire me, and I want to like, you know, grow them into something and
Yeah.
flourish.
That's a pretty huge statement. I think that might even be hard for some people to relate to that statement, even if they haven't been down that road, that the things that you love could also destroy you because there's lots of other factors and layers that you've built into your life that would do so, right? And I think, let me ask you this, because like normally Eamon and I actually start on people's timelines in my conversations. It's a nice framework to sort of get their stories and find some common thread or some arc that is very relatable for everybody. And I even found when I was looking at your timeline, I don't even know where to start with you, because like there's so much here, and you've already alluded to it. So I love that we just kind of got rolling, and I didn't even bother to have to do that.
Yeah,
but
totally.
But you've already referenced it a few times, and I'm sort of curious. I am also extremely curious how somebody gets to where they are right now, because we're talking right now. And I recognize that a lot of people listening won't know all the backstory that you and I know. So I'm not going to go all the way back now and start a timeline right now. It's just what I'm saying. But what I do want to ask you is like, what's clearly obvious is that you were like all in this like long, like patchwork fabric of rock and roll history of artists who clearly this was all that they were ever going to do. You said you started playing when you were 11. You were basically a career musician at 18. This is all you were ever going to do and all to continue to do, which really fits that historical legacy when we look at the patchwork of this business. And you got into it, and you have so many of the typical, like stereotypical stories, and sort of like the ethos just around you. Like I know so many people that know you, right? And I will very quickly say, by the way, every person I know that knows you loves you and always speaks so well of you.
Thanks. It's nice to hear.
And that you have so much respect in the Edmonton community, like of the highest respect. Like going all the way back to, you know, make a callback and a bookend on this was that maybe one of the reasons I never struck up conversations with you is I might have even been intimidated a little bit, because there was such a lore about that you were just this very confident, driven, highly respected artist. And for being a very confident, secure person as I am, like it even challenged my own security probably to do that. But
I suffer from fucking debilitating imposter syndrome, and just like everybody else.
We all do. Yeah,
we all do. And I think that really it just comes down to like I think that there's these kind of like stages to artistic development. And I'm not, I hope I don't sound pretentious here, because I am just as unsure about everything as anybody else. But I think there's, there's education, imitation, creation, and then innovation. And those are the things that I think are the sort of the four fundamental like points on the trajectory of any creative person. So like, you learn how to play your instrument, and then you imitate people who you admire and who do it better than you do. And then by learning how it feels to play the music that you love, you create new original music. And then I think that there's another stage after that where you actually invent and perfect the means by which the art gets made. So for example, like Jack White makes his own effects pedals. Like, to me, it's like he went through he learned how to play guitar. He grew up, saw the Gories, learned how to play blues punk, wrote great songs with the White Stripes. And then he was like, something is missing and I know what it is. And I'm going to fill that blank. Yeah. And that's where the innovation happens. And I think I'm like at the point where like, I know what it is that I want to see from someone who I've trusted with finding an audience for my music in their respective market. So I just want to be able to do that for other people. Like, to me, that's like the next step is like facilitating those moments, those magical moments you're talking about. Somehow. And so in this weird way, the best thing that I could have done for my music was to stop playing it as much and try and like give back and just become better at like, just administering something true. Yeah. And I know it sounds so like hippy dippy and beaded curtain. And it's like, but that's not me. Like, I'm not.
Yeah. I don't think anybody would think it's you, but what it does sound like,
truth to that.
I know you're feeling like you're on the side of the coin where you're like, oh, I don't want to sound pretentious. You see the possibility of that. But just so you know, my side of the coin is this is really refreshing to hear a guy who played this game really hard to the bone actually get to a place in your life and career where you can have that kind of perspective and that kind of like inner motivation is actually very positive, reaffirming all of it.
I hope so. And I hope that it's not coming across as like, maybe I was guilty of before, where it's like take the word punk. Like, I don't want to have this like elitism anymore where it's like, oh, I'm a punk rocker, so I do it the right way. And then it's like, join me or join us or gabba gabba, we accept you, one of us. Like, I don't care how bands want to do it anymore. I just want people to know that that there's no pressure and like, you don't have to worry. And like, if you don't have 10,000 Spotify listeners, who fucking cares? Like, if you don't have 150 people at your show, who cares? Like, it's going to be fine. And all that matters is that music keeps getting made and that people want to hear it. And that the people that are listening are the people that it matters to. That's it. And
I heard a friend the other night. I was at this thing and I was overhearing because a group of us were around and someone was talking about their new perspective because they're in their late 30s and they're single still and they've had to do all these swipe apps and swipe culture. But they were talking about the fact that what they hate about it the most wasn't the swipe culture. What they hate is like, it's completely just built on framing yourself by a set of categories and criteria and presupposing that that's how you want to find somebody else too. And they said, but they're in their late 30s and they realize that they don't have a set of checklists they want to check off about ethnicity or age or weight or education or anything about a person. They're like, I want to find that person that I vibe with because I've figured out that I can vibe with people from all the categories.
Yeah.
But they're locked into categories. And while they were describing this, I was thinking about the music scene, which is sort of how you were just talking about, which is you get to a point where when you're younger and maybe this is going to sound terrible, especially if somebody thinks I'm calling them out for it, but in a more immature state, not in the negative sense of immature that we use it, but just in the natural growth and evolution. Like you go from young and not knowing to older and knowing. You need the categories and criteria. They kind of help you. When I was a kid, I was like, this record label I found out put out this kind of music by this band that I loved, and I would just go and listen to everything they put out because it was a box that helped me find what I was searching for to a degree, until you get older and you start to figure out, the things we're talking about, which is like, I can find that stuff all over the place, anywhere. I just have to be open to it and let things pass through that aren't for me, and then find the ones that are for me.
Exactly. Like I used, we all did. We all used to fall in love with music that just kind of randomly punched us in the gut. And it didn't matter what it was. I mean, like, that was one of the greatest things about punk rock for me when I was younger, was the fact that, like, you could have this term that described everything from Discharge to the Replacements, to John Cooper Clarke, to The Fall, to, like, all these bands that sound nothing alike at all. And the only thing that was similar about them was the fact that you connected with it so deeply. And now people connect with things that just sound like other things they like. And that never even was a possibility when I was younger. Like you'd get recommended bands because, like, if you like the Replacements, you should check out Husker Du. But it was that random sideswiped feeling of being, like, really affected by something that made me fall in love with it. And now, like, I can't believe when people that are really into Spotify and stuff. I mean, and this is a 10-year-old discussion at this point, but it's like, I've never once ever done like a new music Friday or whatever those were. And I sound so antiquated, but, like, I never just wanted to program my brain. It was just something that I was never interested in doing. Like, I was only ever chasing those moments that you're talking about. Yeah. That was the only criteria I ever had.
Yeah. And I mean, it's always been funny to me too. And maybe the other part about growing up is getting to a point, and this is what I think I would hope for everybody, is when you can release the power of perceptions, again, being in an attention business, but even just personally as a fan, and that's what I love. Part of our conversation, Eamon, is like, we're talking about what it's like to be in the business and be a creator. We're also talking what it's like to be a fan, which is, I think, a really cool parallel conversation happening at the same time. And that, there was a while there, like, the truth about me is, like, if you were to tell me I could only have one person on my wall for the rest of my life, it'd be Johnny Cash. Mm-hmm. I don't listen to Johnny Cash. I almost never pull up his songs or his record. They've never been the thing that musically kept me rolling. But the man himself, and the spirit of the man, and the things he said and he stuck through to, his vulnerability to, like, literally live his mistakes on the big open stage, and even the humility to allow himself to be loved for his mistakes, which I think is a deeper humility that I don't even know if I've gotten to yet in my life.
It's the ultimate way of owning your decisions.
Yeah. And his choice to wear black, because he's like, I'd rather connect with the downtrodden of the world than, that came out of a time when he was at the meteoric rise. He was the hottest thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's the kind of person I always want to be. I mean, I've worn black ever since that.
Yeah. So, and I mean, that's a great example of those two parallel approaches. Like, he could have easily at the time just been like, chased radio singles and worn sequin suits, but you're right. He wanted to, to be a voice of working people.
Okay. So, not to sound like, I heard it lately, the kids calling it like glazing somebody, which I thought sounded interesting, but, like, Eamon, you're somebody who has, like, on a local level fit that for me. I just need you to know that up front.
Thank you very much.
Your spirit to stick through all of this, and even the conviction that you've been talking about these things today, is like continues to be inspiring. So I think it's awesome. I should say thank you for that, because again, like you talked at the very beginning about this weird ethos in Canada, how there's actually not that many people and we all essentially adjacently know each other. And so without really knowing each other, you've been sort of this is the kind of person I can very much respect and I would want to be in this industry. So for the sake of everybody else, I just want to call out like what this career has looked like for you a little bit, so people could see, is that when you talk about you've always just wanted to keep working and working hard, and you've kind of stuck to this ethos. Here's the amazing thing to me about, and I'm just interested on what your reflection, because you've been talking about being in a more reflective state right now in your life and career. Like your discography is like, I can't count it. And because it's an impossible discography to count, because there's a Spotify discography, which is mostly what we would call formal releases, for lack of a better term, which is massive, which they go all the way back to 2008, I think, or 2009 with your 13 songs and Whiskey and Light, which
that album awesome. was of itself a compilation of songs from 20
that you had around for a while, and but your discography, like you had things around, you were making things DIY before that, obviously, and with Wild Dogs, and then if you go to your Bandcamp, there's these collections of records that you've made that have songs that appear on other things too, that you would never find on Spotify, that were bona fide collections, and I love some of them that you are clear that it's like, I wrote all of these like and recorded them in the hotel rooms while I was on a tour. Or my favorite one was the one when you were on like, a plane ride or trying to get back home and the holidays from hell.
I can't believe you know that. I think you're totally Nardwaring.
I know, and you wrote this whole, so you basically wrote these songs while you were stuck in airports and sleeping on the floors of things and trying to get back to Edmonton, and then you recorded them while you're here, and then you're back on a plane back to Toronto. And so, I mean, those collections kind of live, and this is what I love about DIY. They don't live on Spotify, they live on Bandcamp, and they could, but then you have songs in there that like end up on other records, or songs that you've released on there that were probably from the past, but you've pulled out like sort of original versions. So like the amount of discography you have, in other words, I've talked to a lot of people and they talk about different people who are prolific. And I don't know whether you felt like that word applies to you, or again, your imposter syndrome creeps up if somebody like me tries to bring it up. But the amount of production that you've done, like besides doing, 60 some shows in 50 days, which is one kind of a incredible excessive haul of performance and performance grit, your writing and recording grit, because let me just quickly call out too, like not everybody in this business like writes a shit ton of songs. Like some people write 10 songs and then that's their record, and then that record lives for 3 or 4 years. And other people, you hear about them, they're like, oh, we had 58 songs and the producer made us whittle it down to 11 for this record. And everyone who's a fan goes, what happened to the other 40 songs? Like they want to know. But you've got this discography that's like 2008, 2009, 2010, 2012, 13, 14, and then you've got like 11, and I'm assuming this is pandemic isolation related. Then you release technically 11 different projects in 2022. And some of them are a series of things, and some of them are a collection of, some of the raw stuff, but you have it all, you've made it all, you've created it all, and you found the way to put it out there in this effort, which is like one thing to write, another thing to record, and then that massive thing that happens that nobody sees in between, which is decision making, producing, workshopping with other musicians, packaging, deciding how to promote, doing all the work where you're like endless emails or phone calls and thinking, what connections do I need to get this out? Or like all that other stuff that happens besides just producing the art. And you've got this ridiculous list. And then your most recent ones I've noticed on Spotify are like in collaboration with some other artists, a couple of them like on a few, like it's happened. You've recorded a few with some people multiple times. And so that's kind of a new version of doing that still. And then in between that, you got like 2 books, which are like really good books and ideas and executions for your career
Thanks.
and what you've gone through.
I'm not very used to being buttered up like this,
Well,
but I'll take it.
well, let me, okay, well, let me bring it down a little bit. What's amazing too is that in the middle of that is like over half that career, maybe, I'm not sure of the timeline exactly, but notorious excess living, typical rock star, like destructive, like not just yourself, but the community of people you're in. It was very clear. Like you like lived that
I definitely
really long time.
Pushed it to the brink.
Yeah. While you were doing all of this,
mm-hmm.
Is just crazy to me. Like this is just like one of the craziest things when I really sit and think about it. I'm wondering. I'm just wondering how this all happens. Like, is this a thing where you sit there and say, I don't know how I could have done it any other way? Or
it's a multi-loaded
have you
question.
Reflected on what the lesson is in there or how it happened? For sure.
Well, with being prolific or whatever word you want to use, like in the way that we were talking about when we were younger, like you just got in the van and you picked a direction and you drove and you played shows because that's just what you did. That's like it for me. And when it comes to making records and shit, like I'm not trying to prove a point. I'm not trying to like win a contest. It's like, it's just like, you know, when I wrote a song, I would record it. And when I recorded 10 songs, I would put them in a little CD jacket and sell them at shows. Like it was no equation. It's just what I did. Just, you know, just like, with like a lot of bands, like lo-fi bands, like Sevedo or Eric's Trip or whatever. Stuff I love, but it's like, they recorded on 4 tracks because it's just all they had. Like they, you know, like they were just like, well, you can afford this. So we'll get. And then it's just funny how something that's just kind of this inevitability in your own mind becomes like an aesthetic. Like that's not ever.
It's very true.
The goal. Like you do what you do and you have a method of working and it just one day, you just got a lot of releases. Like there's really not much more to it than that. And like, for me, it was just like, I was, when it comes to the other stuff, like, I think that anybody that says that, like booze or drugs or whatever hasn't had an impact on like art history is just a liar. I mean, it's not true. I mean, I don't think that the people that did the cave paintings in Lascaux were not on some mind-altering substance. I'm pretty sure that there was a shaman around or something. I without dwelling on it too much, because I also don't want to become one of those fucking like people that talks about being sober in every interview they do. But I definitely wish that I had done it sooner, but at the same time, and I know it sounds cliched and cheesy and stuff, but like, people that are, someone who's really struggling with substance abuse problem or a lifestyle, like the most shit-faced you've ever seen that person, they might be closer to quitting than they've ever been. Like there's no right way. It's just like, for me, it was just a matter of like, it just needed to happen because I was going to die. And it was just like, I never thought of the two things as related. Like I just, both things, the prolificness and like just the notoriety or like being infamous for living that way were both things that I never ever gave a second thought to. Like I didn't, I never had there was not like the all the crazy stories and all the stuff that's become kind of mythologized about me was never anything that I related to like my philosophy on the creation of music. Like they were totally unrelated. I was just a, self-destructive party animal. I mean, there wasn't a lot of intellectualism there. I'm not going to try and excuse it and make it seem more important than it was, but having said that, if I hadn't lived the life that I lived, I probably would not have had a lot of experiences that I ended up writing about. And if I were to say that it didn't have this impact on who I was, I would be lying, but
none of us have the luxury of looking back and making, suggestions or guesses about how anything would be different about our lives.
I have no explanation. So, and I think that it put me in a lot of great situations, put me in a lot of terrible situations. But I'm sure someone who, is coming out of a prison sentence or something, it, like it or not, it really did have an impact on, who you became. But alcoholism is like a prison sentence. I mean, it's like, I don't even think it doesn't even feel good.
Yeah.
I don't know why we do it, but I just know that my life is better now that I've stopped. And I mean, it is funny how the calm and reflection and ability to actually be this truer version of who I am. I find it interesting when I think about just the timeline of my career or whatever, how 3 years into being sober, I've toured less now than I ever have. And I'm more sober now than I've ever been. And because I just think that, there's way more to get out of life.
Yeah. So I referenced before, I had a great conversation with Peter, and he spent a lot of time talking about his upbringing here in Edmonton, as it sort of led into when he moved to Toronto and how things happened, but what shaped him. And you were a part of a lot of those stories. And I really appreciated how he wasn't trying to tell your story, which I thought was really cool. I could tell that he was very mindful of not sort of implying anything about your story, which I thought was very respectful and very mature approach as well. You guys were pretty interwoven for a while. He talked about how he was trying to frame how the industry, it's so married in this industry. There's some obvious reasons, which is, bar owners are using live music as a loss leader for bringing in patrons. And then, so you get a culture of drinking and music being inseparable from each other. So, and then the obvious humanity part of that is, well, some of us are predisposed and wired for this to be a problem and others aren't. And both are being thrown in with the same amount of force into the same culture. And inevitably you're going to see destructive problems end up in some and not in others. And it's not fair. And we don't know why. Like you said before, I don't know why, but it feels like a prison sentence. And that's just the nature of what it is. And it's separate from music. But then it becomes inseparable because it's your life and your story. And this is your career. And it's not just a music career. It's Eamon Mcgrath's life, right? And I think fans don't always immediately make that distinction. And so a lot can get said or talked about that is right or wrong and not always fair. But I guess the way that you just frame that, I feel is also great, because I don't want to glorify it in any way by talking about it, right? And what I find interesting, that I'm curious from you, because I know a lot of people I know some people who I think don't realize they're still in it, and a lot of people who've gotten out and gotten help. And one thing I've learned is, like you said, it's different for everybody, and even the way out is different for everybody. But I think hearing how somebody got out, I've learned from others, is always important for people who are in it, because you never know who's listening and who needs something. So I'm just curious, what was, in some programs, they might call it your bottom or whatever, but what was what was the thing for you that finally flipped the
I
switch
just,
on the way out?
I'll be honest, but I ended up in a bike lane in the rain. You know, it was pretty pathetic. It was like probably something that, relatively speaking, was actually not even the craziest situation I'd ever been in. But I came to, I was passed out in the middle of the road, and I just woke up in the morning in my own bed and just decided I needed to stop or I was going to die. And there's no other, there's not an element about it that's cool. There's not an element about it that's like worth, like it was a throwaway moment. Not
Yeah, I'm
proud
not
of
looking
it.
for a headline.
No.
Just so you know.
But so my point, like as a segue, is like the thing about like now, as someone who's quit drinking and still ends up in bars all the time.
Yeah.
The worst part about the dependency that the music industry's had on booze sales for its propagation is, for me, the number one thing is just the monotony. And now, I like playing shows in other venues aside from bars, not because I have a problem being around people that are wasted or being around booze, because like we said earlier, the money's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
B, if you think that the world's great writers didn't write drunk and edit sober, you are just plain wrong. It's just not. It's just it.
Yeah.
The thing that drives me crazy about it is that we've been now conditioned to accept this standard of just like boring regularity, and we've gotten to this point as a culture where only now people are realizing that great art can exist in other situations and in other places and in other locations. And as the whole thing becomes more and more corporatized, and since COVID, less and less people are drinking, people are looking for new brick and mortar places to have music.
Well, that's a big point. It's because they're shutting down, right? Because a lot of places shut down because of COVID. And so the immediate cry in our business is there's less venues to play and it's going to kill us.
Yeah. That's crazy. Like your house is a venue. Yeah,
exactly.
There's so many other ways to facilitate. And again, we'll bring it back to what we were talking about, those magic moments. And people are so, when you're like, I thought, as like in my 15 years of just chronic, partying or whatever, I thought I was feeling all these great emotions when I'd go out and get wasted and see a band that I loved. And now in hindsight, I realized that I was actually feeling like nothing at all. Like it numbed me completely to things. And I think that people don't realize the danger in just having an arts community that's oriented around one linchpin, like booze sales, like it has been for decades. That does disastrous things to your ability to like appreciate art in a natural way, I think, because people just become accustomed to having just one experience.
Yeah.
And that's
I think that's
lame.
Yeah.
It's just not even, it's not a good way of like, of thinking about music.
And when we first started talking in the we keep making callbacks, which is always fun, but when we first started talking, and I even told you, I keep having these rabbit hole ideas of where we could go, but we were just talking about the touring part and the Canadian landscape and all that. And one of the first things that always comes to mind to me is like how much I've really, really learned in this latest phase of my life, that some of the best music and art has always been formed out of a lack of abundance, out of a lack of a scene, out of the need to create where there isn't anything right
Absolutely.
now, not out of abundance, not out of having like everything available to you, but people who only had a couple of cheap instruments to play and they found a way to make a cool, unique sound on it. And people who there was only one place to play music. And so everybody knew, both fans and creators and artists, like this is where we're going to go and this is where it's going to happen. And they didn't need all this stuff.
People don't realize that in 2004 on White Ave, for example, the Black Dog was literally all there was. And that's why that place became such an institution for as long as it did, because it was like a cultural vacuum, and it just filled that void. And that's what punk rock in the late 70s was, I think. I mean, like, you had such a small amount of bands doing what would eventually become considered to be alternative music in 1973. There was just like, there was Bowie and that was it, kind of. I'm paraphrasing, but like, that's why it was such a huge groundswell, because exactly what you said, it was like a lack of anything that creates the the suction effect that fills that void. And I think that's what's happening now with independent music in Canada, especially. I think that there's like there's the beginnings of what you might be able to call a renaissance going on in terms of independent music in Canada, because I think that it's been so difficult to be truly independent in the last 5 years, that people that do want to see things done in a different, more positive, more joyous way are not, like, they're fed up, but they're not, I don't think they're fighting anything in the sense of taking to the streets. They're just practicing things differently. Like, they're just approaching the way that they bring their art to people in a more positive, artist first way.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting as someone.
I agree.
For someone who's kind of seen it like vanish and go, what I thought would kind of go extinct. And it was kind of this really hopeless feeling from 2001 to.
Well, because we thought there was only one way. So
exactly.
If there is, it's going to go extinct. Right.
Yeah. Like, it's just, and it's crazy, because as long as there's a drum and a person to hit it, there's going to be punk rock. Like, it doesn't have to be anything more than it can be kind of weirdly like Neolithic in this weird way. Like, I get a lot of comfort in that, because I mean, I stopped playing with a full band a couple of years ago because it just got straight up unaffordable to bring anybody. I mean, like,
I've heard that from a lot of people that I talk to now.
I haven't played electric guitar on a regular basis in a really long time, since probably 2022, 2023. Yeah. And so now more than ever, there's like this sort of like Stone Age quality to what I'm doing, because no matter what happens, like, if the promoter stops answering my emails, or if the venue closes, or if blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm still holding in my hands like the only tool I truly need. And more than ever, that's become an asset, I think.
Yeah. As a little aside there, like, this is my fascination right now at this like stage of observing. And I'm not a music historian. I'm just a music observer, and I remember what I remember, I think. But just the fact that whatever got created from anybody, right, that we've been able to have the privilege to like hear or absorb, the amount of layers that influenced what made that get created are fascinating to me, right? Like, for you, just saying that the necessity of the times and what happened in the world, and now the financial situations, and you spend more time on your acoustic, but then now that starts to shape what you create, right? So
absolutely,
all these, so it's your own set of choices that's going to influence, and this is for everybody who's making music or creating art. Your own set of circumstances are influencing what you create, which becomes this identity. But that
absolutely.
is also being influenced by your environment, by your political atmosphere, by cultural shifts. So, like, we're actually so powerless to this thing that we're making our all-encompassing identity of what we've created.
We're like, so the band that I probably look to more than any other band insofar as like how they did what they did and their approach to what they did, like, is the Minutemen. And the Minutemen famously had this kind of slogan where they said that we jam Econo. It was the name of a movie about the Minutemen too, but Econo became this kind of term for, just the complete like punk approach, and the Minutemen famously would save money on recording time by recording overnight, and they save money on recording costs by using recycled tape. And sometimes they would buy a reel of recycled tape and find out that they only had 12 minutes instead of 15 to work with. So they, so the story goes, would play all their songs live off the floor twice as fast just to fit them in less time on the reel. And that to me is like the most amazing thing, like where the philosophy and the circumstances that the artists as people are sort of inhabiting actually directly impact the creation of the art itself. Yeah. And on a grand scale, I think that is what's happening now. I think that COVID was so hard for musicians, and coming out of it was so hard. Like for me, look, I think now about all the masochistic amount of touring that I did when everything opened up again, because I hadn't done it in so long, and I convinced myself that, like the minute I could tour again, I'm going to tour harder than ever before, so you had this kind of self-imposed pressure put on yourself to go out and like gain all this time you lost back. Yeah. But then also having to do that in this environment where like no one knew at all what they were in store for. Like it was a new world and we hadn't even gone out and explored it yet. So it was really hard, and it required some pretty tough decisions, and in my case, it was like I'd been touring solo for so long that I had the luxury of being able to just go and play hundreds of shows for as cheaply as possible. But for a lot of bands, it was a death sentence. And so now you're seeing you're only now seeing the kind of like the first stages of the shock, the shockwave of like looking at
what the new version is going to be now.
Seeing who's left. Yeah, like the bomb fell, so to speak, and now everybody's kind of coming out of the dust and seeing how it all looks. Well, like we just did a Pink Mountaintops show here, and Steve McBean was in like, the ultimate, mid 2000s Canadian indie rock behemoth super group. And it was so trippy watching him play like a solo show that could fit in a hatchback. And I was like, this is where we are now, where the people that are the true lifers, again, what we were just talking about, like, whereas cutting costs and jamming Econo used to be this like aesthetic. Well, now it's not an aesthetic. It's just, this is just how you got to do it.
It's actually going to be the medium itself. I mean, there's this great Brian Eno quote that I never remember fluently, unfortunately, but he basically talks about how we end up creating a medium out of these things that were just like what we're talking about, just the necessity that, and they become the beautiful art themselves. Like
exactly,
we go back, we try to recreate. Now we're trying to recreate tape hiss, because now we appreciate the beauty of what was a broken part of the art form, or the guitar amp when all you had was a guitar and a tube. Mm-hmm. And if I just play it at 10 and leave it, if I leave it turned on, if I leave it turned on for 3 hours, that tube's going to get so hot. And then if I play all my volume knobs at 10, it's going to break up. And I find beauty in that sound. Well, it became a medium, and
it became something replicated.
And we end up trying to replicate it over and over. And I find it interesting because now we're like, you're alluding to just, the business and just the way we actually put ourselves out there and start to do all the things that we thought we knew how to do. We're still, I guess I hadn't really thought through that we're still a little too close to the bomb dropping of the pandemic. Yeah. Like it's going to take some more years to see what the new industry looks like.
Or if we're part of, like there's some movement in Canadian indie rock where it'll become a genre someday. We have no idea. Yeah. I mean, and Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think more and more as well, like Sheila and I talk about this all the time, but we like, as we do more and more shows for bands and we make more and more records for other people and we're more and more involved in our immediate community, our immediate music community. There's more and more people that feel the same way we do. And there's more and more people that are just like exhausted with trying to dismantle it all. Like, I think people just really want to feel those moments that we're talking about. And
Yeah.
ultimately, I'm really inspired by the fact that more so than ever, all the toxic administrative industry bullshit seems to matter less and less to people who realize that all they want to be able to do is sustain their ability to create music.
Yeah.
And that's so liberating. And I mean, in this weird way, it's sort of the moment I've been always waiting for. So
Well,
I'm excited because
you've alluded to this a few times then about where you are now. So I'm really curious if you can describe a little more how you feel about your career right now and what you think it's going to look like over the next few years. Like what kind of music are you creating, or you feel like you're being, like, what's starting to come out? Like, what has shifted? Like, what do you feel has changed for you, and what can I expect?
The biggest thing is just taking removing from my life the urgency and like the feeling of like always needing to be
The hamster wheel of
because I think that what was a lot of it was like a DIY ethos and stuff, but a lot of it was just this sort of compulsive behavior and a way of sort of looking in a mirror, because it was something that I've just been so accustomed to doing. And like I learned, like I played my first show when I was 11, did my first tour when I was 17. It's become such a part of who I am that it was, I just don't know what drew me to doing it the way that I did it for so long. And now I think that I'm more content with not having any answer at all. I think that I'm just operating from a place of just satisfaction. I'm trying to just like learn to acknowledge and just take count of what I've got already. And I mean, that has been the result of that has been, like I write way less songs, but I just don't care, because the songs that I do write when I want to write them are better. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that I'm just more interested in really having, really having a better knowledge and grasp on what it is that I truly want.
Yeah.
Because we are conditioned to thinking that that we want to, get on a big direct support slot and play to 750 people a night. But then you go and you do that a few times and you realize that maybe only 20 people in the crowd are really paying attention to you. Like how is that the goal? And there's not one path. There's a multitude of them. And like, just like there's a multitude of people. And so I don't know, I guess that I'm just trying to just be more relaxed about it all. And I mean, it's not easy because we've all got to eat, but I
was going to ask you about that, because you're showing a lot of optimism, which I am feeling very inspired by, because people who've been doing it for 20 years have all of the material in front of them that they would need to be jaded, which is what I feel the majority of industry people I run into.
Don't get me wrong.
I know you've got to,
there's some jade.
I know. I believe it. But what I'm saying is you're choosing optimism when I ask you a question and the way you answer.
I'm just so sick of caring about things that I just, at the end of the day, don't care about. Like, I don't care about TikTok. I don't care about Spotify. I just don't care, and I don't want to care. I think that like indifference is such a powerful weapon and like, that's my goal. I just like, I don't have a booking agent. I don't want a booking agent. I don't want a booking agent. I'm perfectly happy booking my own shows, and not because I'm waving some black flag, but because it's a system that's worked for me, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't think that there needs to be anything that's more scrutinized there. And so, yeah, to answer your question, and I'm, again, no expert, I'm just saying that, like, I think that if I can achieve that, and it works for me, then maybe it'll work for someone else.
I'm curious if you, and I'm not even sure how to ask the question, but I feel like you're maybe the most interesting, qualified person to give a good answer about it. But when you've been playing for 20 years, even if you've, had the portions of your career where you get signed to a bigger label, as fleeting as that is, or these things that we think establish success and stability in this sort of chasing the dream, even those people I've talked to, really, that still didn't create a world of, they don't have RSPs, they don't have a retirement plan, they don't have all these paychecks to show the government, for their, that they should qualify for things like that. Over time starts to seep in like a little fearfully for people.
Well,
and
even
maybe
so,
that's what drags people out. Like what I see most of the time, Eamon, is they stop trying to make music and they start becoming a promoter, or they, you know what I mean? Or they end up falling into the industry because they didn't go to school, but they learned obviously a trade along the way. And so they're doing something in the business. And I'm just wondering, I guess, honestly, I'm just asking you because like you're 20 years in, you're still moving forward, you're still making, but you're contributing back, but you're holding to this very clear idea of where you're going to fit in the business and your own ethic and beliefs. And I'm wondering how you wrestle with how am I going to keep,
well, yeah.
paying the rent thing.
All of those reasons are better reasons than any to make sure that you're doing this in a way that doesn't destroy you emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever. Because this is all I've got, and I am going to be doing it in some capacity till I die. And I have, told myself I'm going to quit. I didn't even count how many times over. And my girlfriend and partner, Sheila, has talked me off the ledge more times than I would probably care to admit. And somehow I always come back to it. So yeah, like now's the time to figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't make you miserable. Yeah. Because yeah, I mean, like I have to be able to play music for people and get compensated for it. If like it completely all truly 100% falls apart, like, yeah, if like the atomic bomb drops, I got to be able to pick up an acoustic guitar and play a song for somebody. So now more than ever, I think people, and I'm not the only one that probably feels that way, but like now more than ever, I think that, like you got to figure out how to make your show happen without the lighting rig, and do it in the most honest, minimalistic, primitive way possible, because we don't know what's going to happen. Technology is terrifying, and we live in an unpredictable world. Most of us on an individual level are totally powerless to change it. So the only thing we can do is try to, just be at peace with ourselves, I think, and why we're doing something. So yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, that's my answer for that. Is like, I think that it's something that I'm probably going to, in some capacity, always be doing. So, I better figure out soon how to do it in a way that doesn't kill me. Yes.
Well, I mean, we've talked for over an hour and a half, and it feels like it's been just blowing by, and this has been amazing for me.
Yeah, this was a good one. Thanks for doing this.
I love your perspective on things and the way that everything, there's a lot of weight behind everything you say because of your experiences, and that, you wear those experiences on your sleeve too. It makes me think of how my last conversation was with an artist, Tara Lightfoot, and she quoted a well-known phrase about, you meet the same people going up the mountain as you do coming down. It's
Coming
kind of
down,
a colloquialism for being kind, because in a greater perspective of life. But she got that advice from Daniel Lanois when she was young.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah.
Tara is a great person to talk to about this stuff, because she's a lifer too. I mean, she'll be playing music for people no matter whether there's a light bulb or not,
And if Daniel Lanois tells me that one, now it's not just a colloquialism anymore. Now it's something I'm going to live by. And I feel like, I just feel like hearing your perspective on some of these things and the way that you've framed it is really meaningful. I know it's meaningful for me. I hope it's really meaningful to other people, because you just so convincingly lived it. So I appreciate all that. I do want to ask you one thing before we wrap things up, though, because we've talked a long time, is on the tail end of like where you are right now, which is I really want to find out. I want to know about, you're putting on shows for people. You've talked about what you see as a new revolution and these new things, and seeing people have these moments in these new venues and places. Is there any like that are fresh to mind, like an artist or a band or somebody you're like, this is somebody I've seen who's doing it this way and I'm inspired by right now? I'm always curious to hear from somebody who they've seen and what they're being inspired by right now.
Yeah, I mean, in the last month, I opened for Juliana Riolino 2 nights ago. We did she and I, Cassette Records, put on a By Divine Right show.
I saw her at Folk Fest this year too. She was great.
I mean, she's jaw dropping, and her band is like a force of nature, but so is BDR. I mean, By Divine Right is like it's like I look to a band like that, and they've like run the gamut of the roller coaster of everything we're talking about today. Like they've done that 20 times over. And they're still monumental. Like that band is so good, and then like we recorded this band called Humble John, this Windsor band, like really great country band, a couple weeks ago. I mean, within 5 weeks those were like 3 really great in-person examples of how rock and roll is not dead. It's just the means by which it's got to get brought to people is different. That's it.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
I'm really happy about that. I mean, like, I think that like popular mainstream culture is just in the toilet bowl. I just don't have any, so I don't understand it anymore. And I don't care to, because the things that I've been a part of and I've seen firsthand are really inspiring. And I think that people are like thirsty for something real. And more and more bands are going to figure out how to do it affordably and not have to, submit to a machine that rips them off. Because ultimately that's what it comes down to, is keeping your costs as low as possible so that, any revenue you're generating is significant. And if you can do that, and you can just keep the wheels turning, you will hit this tipping point where you will find an audience of some kind and hopefully bring those moments that we're talking about to people, because that's the only mission in my mind.
That's awesome. You talked about slowing down from your ridiculous Road Warrior days, but you do have some shows coming up, which I just want to call out for people who are listening, because you're an Edmonton raised boy, and you're going to be in Edmonton from
time of recording.
Is that the 18th?
Yeah, I'm in Edmonton on December 18th, Saskatoon on December 19th, and then at the tail end of February, the new year, we have some Ontario and Quebec.
You run through Ontario, which is always fun.
And this is something that I used to do, like I was back and forth Alberta and Ontario, five times a year, but like I haven't been to the prairies in probably 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
I haven't. I think. Don't quote me on that, but it's been a long time, and I haven't actually done a proper Ontario tour in a long time either. It feels like it's
Yeah.
been at least 18 months. Um, so yeah, for me, this is like a long time away. I'm still touring and playing songs off of the record that we put out in 2023, A Dizzying Lust, like that is still fresh in my mind. And like we were saying earlier, I just don't care about the concept of the album cycle anymore. So I'm just going to tour and put out music when I feel like it because it makes me happy. And
That's awesome.
That's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I just know because you're obviously so, like I alluded to earlier, well known in Edmonton. And anytime I have an Edmonton legend on the show, I can see the soul sucking part of this. The analytics of my podcast tell me that the numbers go up, but the numbers go up when I have an Edmonton legend on.
Well, here's hoping.
So
I mean,
I say that because I don't give a shit about the analytics. What I know is
the irony.
Lots of people are going to listen. So what I'm saying is December 18th, which will be a week after this gets broadcast
at Ben Stick
Brewing. And I hope to see everybody who's told me that they love Eamon.
Well, I hope
show
to
their
see you there.
fucking face at Ben Stick Brewing on the 18th.
I hope so.
That's what I have to say.
And a huge thanks to Craig Martell of Double Lunch, a very old friend.
Great. Craig's been a great promoter in the city.
Promoting this show for me. And same with Saskatoon. I haven't been out to Saskatoon in a while, so it'll be great to see some old faces.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just and quickly to talk about on the subject of being from Edmonton, I think that being from that place really had a profound impact on who I turned out to be, because it's funny how you talk about analytics and all these things that just didn't even have any semblance of a like there's no semblance of mattering at all when I started playing music. And in Edmonton, actually, the thing about being from there and going back and seeing bands from Edmonton now, the thing about Edmonton that was so great was like that, just there's kind of what I used to think was maybe an inferiority complex, like just this belief that your community would always be ignored and there was no hope of ever making it, and you'd never have a career playing music because you were so out in the boonies and touring was so expensive and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm just really fortunate to be from a community that sort of looked at like what was maybe a perceived lack of opportunity and just saying, well, fuck it. We're never going to be successful anyway. So we might as well just create the most honest, sincere, badass art we can.
Yeah.
And then having the irony of that be that it ended up being that all these amazing artists came from that era of Edmonton that I was really fortunate enough to be a part of.
I agree.
It's fascinating to me how like this perceived lack of success ended up creating art that was so wide reaching that like a lot of people ended up being really successful.
Timeless and reached across a lot of time and has sort of endured. I love that you say that and feel the same way, because one thing that has always stuck in my mind is I'll never forget, it was our first tour through Ontario, and I had done all the work to basically set up interviews at every college radio station along the way when we were in the band. So this would have been maybe 2007 or 7.
Yeah.
And I kept getting asked the same question. Everybody wanted to know, like, because nobody out east, they were like, what's the scene like in Edmonton? We have no idea. What's Edmonton like? And I don't know why, because I hadn't given it any thought. But exactly. I started describing, I said, they were like, what's the scene like? I'm like, I love Edmonton so much because, for lack of a better term, our blue collar ethic means that we don't give a shit what anybody thinks about us. No. And I felt like, and I didn't want to call out other cities, but I'm like, it felt like at the time, like Calgary really wanted to be Vancouver and Vancouver really wanted to be Toronto. And I felt like these scenes, the way that people I was meeting were, what they were aspiring to be was always something other than who they were. Yeah. And everybody I knew in Edmonton, all I felt about Edmonton was, if you come here, you can be whatever you want to be. Yeah, like you're gonna find a place
in Toronto. I mean, I remember when I moved, it was like, I remember I moved when I moved there. It was like every single show I did, it was like I had 5 names on the guest list that were, industry people, and
Oh yeah.
there's just that was never even a thing that would have ever happened in Edmonton at a hall show, or like it was like it just never occurred to me that that happened in the music industry. Like I just thought you went and played shows and that was it. And because of that, I never made any decisions based on who was maybe in the crowd other than people that bought a ticket to be there.
Yeah.
And it was really liberating. And look at all the bands from Edmonton, like whether it's, it doesn't matter what kind of genre it is. It's like, it's always had this history of making really, really badass music, no matter what kind of music it is.
I agree. I'm really proud of our town, and I don't mind. I mean, there's a part of me that feels like, oh, don't make your whole podcast a Homer version of a thing. But I can't help it. What I'm saying is I can't help it.
Well, and now for me as a Windsorite, I talk about like kind of getting older and understanding life a bit more, or trying to. I love Windsor and I love living here. And one of the reasons why I love it so much is because it reminds me so much of what Edmonton was like when I was young. Windsor now to me is like that super creative environment that Edmonton was in the mid 2000s, where you have a highly intellectualized working class population because of the U of A. And in Windsor, we have the university. Sheila always laughs because Canadian music in some ways sort of passed over the community here because nobody listened to the CBC. They listened to WDET in Detroit.
Yeah, across the river, yeah.
Yeah, and Windsorites, like lifelong Windsorites, like when I talk to them about the temperature in Celsius, they have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. To this day. But so like working class auto town, but like highly intellectualized because of the fact that the Temptations were a local band, and you had the university here. And so Edmonton was the same. Growing up was like, it was just this really tough working class city that had like a real appreciation for high art. And so just like Windsor, the people that were creating that high art approached it the way they would on an oil patch, or on an auto plant, like with just like, I got to feed my kids, like it's cold outside. We got to pack for the winter. Like, so I've kind of come full circle in this weird way. And in a lot of the bands I see here as an outsider, I see the same kind of spirit and energy. And that has been like so inspiring.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So yeah.
Well, this has been an absolute treat for me, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too. I'm glad this worked out.
The time. Yeah.
And I wasn't sure about timing, but it sounds like it was meant to be. So I really appreciate you.
I think it was totally meant to be.
On the show.
And
thanks for all the kind words.
It's been great.
It's nice to hear.
Yeah, well, I mean them all, man. So you're highly appreciated, even as much as respected. And I think
thank you very much.
I appreciate the influence that you had in this community and continue to. And I'm looking forward to you coming back to town. And
I can't wait.
Again, just really grateful for the time and the conversation we had. So I just want to wish you all the best and hope we'll actually
cross paths,
bumping into each other next time. That'd be great.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much.
You bet, bud. Thank you.
Talk to you soon, Glenn.
Hey, I'm Alexi. Stick around for post-fame with me and my dad.
Doesn't matter. We're good to go.
Did you start it?
Yeah, I started it.
Okay, cut
You didn't know that I started it?
that first bit out.
Okay. Like you singing?
Yeah.
What if I don't cut it out?
You'll never have post-fame ever again.
No, it's not. You can't threaten me.
Just a...
Well, you shouldn't threaten me.
Oh.
Is the catch.
Okay.
This is
Episode 32.
2, which means...
Last one of the season.
Yeah, season ender, which, there were times when I was like, wow. And then other times I was like, oh, come on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's me this semester.
Okay. So if you're low energy today, it's...
Why are we calling me out?
Because I'm calling you out.
Okay.
It's because you're in the middle of finals. But we kind of had I feel like we've had scholastic excuses all the way through post-fame.
I'm a dedicated
the last
student.
number of months.
No, we had one where I was having a bunch of midterms.
Yeah, I mean, generally you're having a good time still, but I'm just saying, it just seems like familiar. It just feels familiar.
This semester's a rough one.
It's okay. It's completely okay. So episode 32, Eamon Mcgrath,
Yeah.
Edmonton expat, and it felt like for me when that whole conversation started, it was sort of like a no-brainer to me in trying to get it to be the last episode of the season. It felt like a bookend to Peter Dreams, who was like near the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And Eamon and his family and everything was a part of that story that he was telling so much on his upbringing in Edmonton. So
Nice
I
full
was like,
circle.
I thought like it'd be really interesting to sort of hear Eamon's perspective, although we actually didn't really talk about his time in Edmonton. It was like straight to draw.
Where it went, like very naturally. So.
Yeah, I told you that before you even listened, that we literally just started talking and hit the ground running, and I almost had no method for going back onto a timeline, which I often do, but
I think it's nice that way.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessary, right? Like sometimes I use that as a device for conversation, and other times I actually want to, try to draw an arc through someone's career with them. But this was a little bit different. So
a little more conversation, a little less interview.
Yeah. And so it was just like right into it, which I really loved. And a lot of things he touched on that I could have just really bit on all the way through, but I didn't.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, and there was a time in the conversation, the things that I would sort of wanted to reflect on after the interview about just the things about, he talked directly to the idea again of chasing the dream and talked really, and I love it. And we had that a little bit with, I think both the last two, like Tara and Begonia, both sort of like literally addressed it by themselves. It almost starts me thinking, like, are they like practicing some of the information before
are they also doing their
thinking
homework?
Yeah, like they're thinking, okay, this is this guy's podcast and I need to say something along these lines. So anyhow, his chase the dream was how he framed, and this is what I found interesting, that he framed, like, he's almost 20 years in. He basically said like the first up till early pandemic, probably, so almost 15 years of his professional career, and obviously all the time before that, he was like still chasing that dream, still trying to land like a big opening spot for like a headliner tour or some version of a thing. And I guess from the outside, it felt surprising because it would seem to me that he had locked into this career mode, right? Where he wasn't visibly, to me, when you've been doing that long, it's like he's not still trying to chase and get the big fame thing at all. He's sort of gotten used to like, I can have a career out of just taking my guitar across to Europe and just playing every single night all over the place, and he makes those connections. And I referenced a guy who's also from Edmonton, Scott Cook, who's very like folky guy, and he's like that. He'll play like 300 times a year, and he used to. And he just has like this probably massive book of his contacts, and he just keeps mining the same place and building like connections and fans in every little town and city. And that's his life, right? He's like a true, like the old traveling.
I was going to say, yeah.
And I guess I thought in a punk rock kind of way that that's what Eamon was, but him just talking about, like he's having to redefine what success and what he's happy with.
I was just gonna say that was the one part of the episode. Like, there was a couple things he said where I was like, oh, that's really interesting. But like the one part that I picked out that I was like, oh, like if I'm gonna talk about one part of the episode, like it's got to be this. There's one part where he literally just was like going on a tangent, and he was just saying like, if your Spotify has 1,000 listeners or 10,000 or 100,000, like who cares? If you're playing to like a crowd of 300,000. 3,300, like who cares? And like he's just kind of going on a tangent about this, and he's like, it's interesting because we've had other people on the show be like, just do what makes you happy. Like, there's a certain level you have to be happy with. Like, there's been those conversations, but I don't think anyone's been as blunt in, like, their honesty of just, like,
Yeah.
like, actually who cares? Like,
Yeah.
if you're someone who's, like, choosing to be in the industry for the love of the industry and playing and stuff, like, it, like, actually doesn't matter. And he's just so passionate about that. And I was like, I can get behind that.
And this is where it tied the bow to me of like,
The whole
is
point
he
of
actually punk
Almost
rock?
Famous enough to
Or,
do
but
about
that,
it?
and is he actually punk?
Yeah.
In the sense that the others sort of say it, but they sort of say it with a little, like what's
we
the
had
word?
to take a
A
long
little,
time to get there.
it's the politics of like, they're still going to say it in a friendly way.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm lacking the word I want. But his was just very much, I just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about any of it. I don't care about all that stuff. He literally just doesn't care. And then that's when I pointed out, I'm like, yeah, you don't even have a website with your domain, like your name anymore. Like, that's how much he doesn't actually care. And I guess that's the other thing to me, because I keep reflecting on what is punk rock and this idea of the whole, like, people who actually would put their money where their mouth is kind of thing. Like, he literally walks, the talk all the time in what he does, which was pretty cool for that to just organically come out the way it did. And I guess I hope it felt to me like there was so many possible tangents. There was like little things just to the way a normal conversation happens, where you want someone to articulate a little better what they said, or you want to sort of, you have an idea that adds on. But then I almost started getting afraid, even when that part of the conversation happened, of like, if I add on, it might take it in another direction, and then we'll lose all the stuff that's happening right here. And I didn't want to lose any of it, because I just thought he was going to be so refreshingly candid about all this stuff, which he was.
Candid's a good word. I also feel like there's so many people, especially with like social media and all like the online stuff these days, like even like very genuine people you've had on, like you can still, there's still that obsession with like the numbers and like the statistics and like,
in the true good way though, I think what you're trying to say.
It's a bad way. I'm just saying like,
but they have to. It's the business.
That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying like it was kind of unique about him. Like that's what I think made that conversation like that other layer of interesting, is like he's like kind of unique. He's a little rarity.
Yeah, and you could sort of feel the jadedness simmering underneath. But I wanted to call it at one point in the conversation where he was actually being so, like, by choice, so optimistic, even like talking about, he thinks there's like a new wave in Canada coming. There's so many great new artists and so many great other venues to play that could be really cool. And you could sense that he's still in this place of discovering all that. So I just think there's a whole lot of stuff in there. There's just, I need to go back and listen again, I think, about the things that I might have missed. So I thought it was a good bookend on the season.
It was a very good, the last like couple, but especially this one as a last episode, they were just very like representative of what the show's about.
There was one part where he wasn't maybe as, my sense was he wasn't wanting to be as candid, and that was literally talking about the excessive years of his alcoholism. And I get it. Why? Because he even said himself, he's like, he doesn't want his interviews to always be about his sobriety. And so I didn't want to go that way. I only wanted to reference it in light of the musical career. But I sort of sense like, don't jump in on that, because there's such a parallel to me that was happening between, obviously, like, we use the term excessive, like he was into excessive substance abuse, right?
Yeah.
But what he was also describing in his career at the exact same time was he was excessive in his touring. Yeah. Like 62 days in 50 days or something, right?
Yeah.
The performances.
Yes.
And then like the ridiculous discography of all the music that he's made that we can't even count and he's put out. So there's just been theme of like, he was so compulsive with and excessive in his output of everything in his life. Like that's just, I guess I was just thinking like that's just a rare person. You don't meet that person every day
No.
that has managed that kind of output in their life.
And is still so optimistic.
And still is going and still is looking for a new way to keep going. So, yeah. Anyway, I like that. And yeah, very close to the theme, which makes the heart feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's just real quick for anyone who's lasted this long, a little preview on next week, which we've already sort of teased. We're going to put out a Post-Fame Plus the week before Christmas. Yeah, but we're going to call it like our Post-Fame Wrapped.
Yes.
Because we'll like highlight some of the things from our Spotify Wrap, but I think we want to pull out even just because we've been talking about our music picks all year since we launched the entire podcast back in January. So we've been talking about our music picks, and I think it'd be fun to just see what has lasted and stuck around. And then we'll also talk about where we think maybe Spotify's data is crap and they're lying to us, and then see what surprises we also had and share what we think everyone should hear.
True. Add to the playlist.
Okay. Then we'll do that.
Fine. I'll see you in a few days then.
Well, yes, you will.
Okay,
Bye.